Beyond Sandbox came out a couple weeks ago now. It's safe to say that it was a disaster. People had problems including connectivity issues, lack of content, and borderline misleading advertising. The team wasn't organized when it came to the Steam page, and they sent the game to get reviewed on release date. Little did they know, it would take days to get approved and be available for download. People who did get to play it were mad that the game wasn't what they expected, and the rest were mad that they couldn't. The back-to-back-to-back online slander wasn't doing them any favors either. Like damn. To get into why Beyond Sandbox sucks, we need to talk about why people are excited in the first place. Chances are you've seen their promotional material at some point. For me, they kept showing up on my shorts feed. At the time, I thought the game's physics looked really cool. Every time I saw it, I just couldn't wait to play the game. It seems that thousands of other people were thinking the exact same. Every couple of weeks, they would release a small development update showing off a new neat feature. It made everyone feel included in the creation of this next-gen modding platform. Eventually, a large community was formed, all anticipating the launch and following every update. Just watching, it looked really in-depth. There were so many different ways to brutalize NPCs, cool physics interactions, game modes, multiplayer. On the surface, it was like Bone Lab on steroids. But if you take a second and think about what they're showing off here, ignore whatever feature they're showcasing. They're literally just standing in an untextured box with a stationary NPC, as the guy manipulates and mutilates them. Everyone expected these physics to be used in some way other than just messing with these 5 NPCs. But that's all the game basically is in its current state. The enemies who do move around suffer from extremely generic, stiff walking and attacking animations. Even the stationary enemies are more stiff than they should be. It feels like all their body parts aren't really connected. When you drag their hand, it should cascade to their arm and tug their whole body and move their position. But it just stretches their arm, and when released, they just awkwardly go back to their default position. What is there to do in this game right now? You get 10 barren maps, dozens of store-bought asset flips, 5 different game modes, including a somewhat decent COD Zombies clone. The thing I hate about the maps is how empty they feel. Sure, it may look like there's a bunch of stuff here, but you can't physically interact with or move any of it. Boneworks and Bone Lab felt real, because you could interact with almost anything you thought you could. The most popular map online is this test map. There isn't a single interactable item larger than the weapons. You can't even move the table, and you can't spawn any large props. They aren't in the game yet. What you see is what you get. Not a very in-depth sandbox, is it? It pisses me off that they call this the next gen of VR, when a game from almost 7 years ago beats this game in every area where it counts. What also pisses me off is the pricing. You can excuse all the issues with the game by mentioning that it's not finished yet, it's still in early access. But the game is $20, $20 US. You can grab Boneworks on sale for $24. And if you want a way better multiplayer experience, then you can just pay $40 for Bone Lab. But let's be honest, everyone already has that game anyway. Just play that. After you figure out how to install Fusion, it's way more convenient and offers a better experience. You might be thinking, but Bone Lab has terrible melee combat. Beyond Sandbox is way better in that regard. You have a point. Bone Lab's melee combat is lacking, but if you want that, then just buy one of the Saints and Sinners games. Chapter 1 has the same price of $20, has way better combat, a story mode, and a fun, endless survival mode. And Chapter 2 is actually cheaper, but doesn't include that survival mode. But I do have to admit, if they did one thing right, it's the NPC torturing. When recording, I always had a goal in mind, a certain aspect of the game to film, but I always just end up mercilessly beating the NPCs. However, all up, the amount of content currently available just doesn't justify that price. They could have either A, released it when it was more polished and complete, or B, just dropped the price to $10. Just creating a modding platform without putting in much effort to the base game is such a predatory practice. When you put nothing but physics and the bare necessities into a game, and rely on the community to make content, then put a price tag on it, you're just straight up profiting off the work of others. Sure, other games have similar premises, for example Gmod, everyone plays that game for the user-generated content, but there is still plenty to do in the base game. Just the content included is enough to justify the price. That's just not the case in Beyond Sandbox. I think later down the line, if they stay committed to updating and polishing the game, then it might actually be worth the $20. One of the biggest things they advertised is realistic finger physics. I have to admit, they are impressive and do act like you'd expect. The rest of the player physics have a lot to desire though. Momentum and jumping is stiff and feels like any other generic VR game. There is no climbing at the moment, which you would definitely notice. Sometimes the Bone Lab muscle memory kicks in, and it really just takes me out of the game. The leg physics are incredibly annoying. They don't even feel justified. Your legs don't do anything. They don't feel like they're physically there when you walk or jump. But when you crouch to pick up anything, your legs just kick it out the way. And you've got to chase down small items, because some things can't be force grabbed. The character model as a whole feels really janky. In this clip, I'm touching my waist. Your in-game waist is way too low. It makes your legs feel so far away. Definitely the biggest selling point is the game's fully physical multiplayer without needing to set anything up. So how is the online multiplayer experience? Well, you look at the server list and see dozens of games all on the same boring map, on the same boring game mode. You join up, get murked over and over because there isn't anything to hide behind. But that's a player problem and not a game problem. But anything, and I mean anything you do in multiplayer will have some kind of lag. For me, that sometimes means horrible jitters, guns randomly racking while running around, hands and body always jittering, this weird player backflip bug, random crashes and disconnects. The multiplayer often feels like torture to play, and the single player is boring and lacks content. It's just a lose-lose. PvP was something that I was especially excited for. I was hoping for a half-decent melee combat system and grounded ranged combat with lots of possibilities. Fighting another player with melee weapons feels like they don't do any damage. It just leads to you and your opponent just flailing at each other for ages. The fist fights are even worse, but are ironically just really fun because of how crazy they are. It's tiring stuff trying to outflail your opponent. PvP as a whole isn't good enough to take seriously. I find it most fun when you just spawn kill people. I know it's scummy, but at least it's entertaining. When I found out that the game was made in Unreal Engine, I got a bad feeling that the game would look generic and perform horribly. Unfortunately, I was right. The first thing I noticed when I first launched it was how bad it was running for me. I dropped the settings and it looked terrible, and only got a tiny bit better. That's probably why everyone plays on the really simple maps. I can't imagine that the quest experience would be too smooth either. To wrap up, I think that the game could potentially be fixed in the future, but right now, you probably shouldn't buy it. The game probably isn't a shameless cash grab, but it's objectively not worth it right now. Peace.